My father leaned toward my mother and forgot how far a cruel whisper could travel. "This is embarrassing." I heard it from behind the half-open door of the little side room where I was waiting to walk out. A beat later, he made it worse. "Look at this place. Folding chairs, grocery store flowers, a community center. It looks cheap." A few guests shifted in their seats. Nobody turned fully around. But I could feel the room hear him. That was the thing about humiliation in families like mine. It almost never arrived as a shout. It came dressed as judgment, quiet, certain, meant to sink in. My fiancé, Michael, tightened his hand around mine. "You want me to say something?" I shook my head. At 29, I had learned that some people did not stop hurting you because you asked nicely. They stopped only when the story they told about you stopped working. My name is Lila Bennett, and this was supposed to be the simplest part of the day. A small wedding, 40-something guests. One room I loved more than any ballroom my father would have paid for, just to impress people he barely liked. The community center smelled faintly of coffee, floor polish, and fresh flowers. The white fabric draped along the walls moved every time the air conditioner kicked on. Kids' paintings still hung in frames down the hallway because I had asked the staff not to take them down. This place mattered to me. It had long before it became my wedding venue. Out in the main room, my brother Ryan let out a low laugh, classic Lila, turning everything into a statement. Then my father said the part that landed hardest. "I'll sit through it," he muttered. "But I'm not walking her down the aisle in a place like this." Michael looked at me again, more carefully this time. I kept my face still, but inside, something old and familiar tightened. If my father refused to walk me into my own wedding, then who was going to do it? And as always, this story is a work of fiction created by Revenge Pulse for storytelling purposes. My father liked to tell people he had built everything from nothing. What he meant was that he believed hard work only counted if it ended in money people could see. After college, he had a desk waiting for me at one of his insurance offices. Not a favor. The way he framed it, a future, clean clothes, reliable pay, a name people respected before you even opened your mouth. When I told him I was taking a job in social work instead, the silence at dinner turned sharp enough to cut. "You're throwing your life away," he said. My mother did what she always did when she wanted to wound without looking cruel. She folded her napkin, kept her voice soft, and said, "Helping people is admirable, honey, but admiration doesn't build a stable life." Ryan didn't even argue. He just smiled the way people do when they think time will prove them right. He became the family example after that, the one with the firm handshake, the tailored suits, the promotion dinners, the son who had done it correctly. I was still invited for a while. Then less. Fewer calls, fewer updates, Christmas plans I heard about after the fact, a promotion party for Ryan, a housewarming I somehow never knew had happened. I was not thrown out in one dramatic moment. I was edited out, but I kept working. Night shifts, weekend shifts, extra training after long days that already felt like 2 days stitched together. I sat with kids nobody expected to make it. I learned how to stay calm when anger was easier. At that community center, years ago, one teenage boy looked at me like the world had already closed its doors on him. I told him it hadn't. That conversation changed more than his life. I never told my family any of it. Not because I was ashamed, because I was done begging to be understood. I was smoothing the front of my dress when my phone buzzed in my hand. Running behind. Don't start without me. By the time the music was supposed to start, my father was still sitting in the front row with the same expression people wear when they think they've been personally insulted by bad wallpaper. The wedding coordinator, a kind woman named Denise, who had already saved us twice that morning, stepped over with a careful smile. "Mr. Bennett, we're ready whenever you are." He looked up at her, then at the room, then at me standing near the doorway in my dress. And somehow, his face hardened even more. "I'm not doing this," he said. Denise blinked. "I'm sorry I'm not going to stand up there and play proud father in a place that looks like a neighborhood fundraiser," He did not shout. He did not need to. The room went still in that awful way rooms do when people hear something they know they should not have heard, but cannot pretend they missed. My mother leaned toward him fast. "Thomas, lower your voice. That was all. Not stop. Not she's your daughter. Just lower your voice." Ryan let out a breath through his nose and shook his head like I had created a logistical inconvenience instead of a humiliation. "Lila always does this," he said. "She turns everything into a statement." Michael moved before I even realized he had. "That's enough." I caught his wrist. "No." His eyes searched my face. He was angry for me. That part hurt too, because I needed him to be. I needed at least one person in that room to understand this was not a misunderstanding. It was a choice. Behind the rows of folding chairs, the walls were lined with framed artwork from local kids. I had seen some of those kids come into this building carrying anger, fear, or nothing at all. This place had held them when the world had already started writing them off. Now it held me. The whispers started first near the back, then spread in small, uncomfortable waves. I could feel people looking at me, then at my father, then back at me again. And from outside, across the parking lot, a line of dark vehicles began to pull in. The first person who stepped out was not an ordinary wedding guest. 2 security men reached the front doors before anyone inside understood what they were seeing. They were not local event staff, not off-duty police. They had the calm, watchful look of people who were used to entering rooms before someone important did. One stepped inside, scanned the space once, then spoke quietly into the mic at his collar. The whispers died on their own. My father stood halfway, then sat back down. My mother's hand flew to her necklace. Ryan turned toward the door with the kind of alert expression he usually saved for people whose names opened doors. I already knew who the text had come from. I said nothing. Michael moved closer until his shoulder brushed mine. "Are you sure you want this to happen like this?" I looked out at the room that had stopped being a wedding room and had become something else entirely. "I didn't set this up to punish anyone," I said. "I'm just done shrinking my life so they can feel comfortable looking at it." He nodded once. That was one of the reasons I loved him. He never needed the speech twice. The Bennett version of worth had always been simple. Nice house, strong salary, the kind of event people could mention later with approval. That was why this room offended them. Not because it was ugly, because it could not be used as proof, but this place had never embarrassed me. It was where I first learned that saving one life never looked glamorous from the outside. Sometimes it looked like stale coffee, plastic chairs, and one kid deciding not to disappear. My father's face changed before the doors even opened. Not softer, more frightened. He was no longer thinking about me. He was thinking about who might have heard him. Every head in the room turned toward the entrance. Then the doors opened, and a United States senator stepped inside and said, warm as if we'd known each other forever, "Lila." Senator David Cole came in with one aide at his shoulder and 2 security men near the door, and the whole room adjusted around him without meaning to. He was dressed simply. Dark suit, calm face, no performance in him at all. That made it land harder. Truly important people never need to announce themselves twice. He looked straight at me and smiled like this was the easiest thing in the world. "Kiddo, are we still on time?" My father rose so fast his chair legs scraped the floor. His voice changed instantly. Warmer, smoother, the version he used for donors and clients. "Senator, what a surprise. I didn't realize we had such distinguished local support today. Perhaps you know the groom's family?" My mother found a brittle smile and stood beside him. Ryan stepped forward with his hand already out, wearing the expression of a man certain he belonged in any room success entered. Senator Cole did not take the hand. He nodded at them once, polite but not inviting, then looked back at me. "I'm sorry I cut it close." Ryan recovered first. "We were just having a little misunderstanding," he said lightly. "Family nerves. You know how these things get?" "Yes," my mother added quickly. "We were only worried about Lila. About her future. This place just isn't quite—" She paused.
searching for softer words than the ones already spoken. It doesn't really reflect our family. There it was, the old story again. Not cruelty, just concern, not contempt, just standards. They were trying to sweep blood under a rug while everyone watched the stain. I said nothing. I did not need to rescue them from the truth of what they had done. Senator Cole looked from my father to my mother to Ryan, and I saw the room settle inside him. He understood more in 5 seconds than my family had bothered to in years. Then he lifted his hand toward me and said, "For everyone to hear, if her father won't do it, I will." Senator Cole crossed the room and stopped in front of me like the rest of the scene had already been settled in his mind. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said. Then he turned just enough for the room to hear him clearly. "And I would be honored to walk you down the aisle." My father made a small sound in the back of his throat. The kind men make when they are trying to recover ground without admitting they lost it. "Senator," he said, forcing out a smile, "I'm afraid I'm still trying to understand how you know my daughter." Ryan gave a short laugh, still hanging on to the old version of me because it was the only one that made his own life feel taller. "Lila works in social work." Senator Cole looked at him, and when he spoke again, his voice stayed calm. That made the correction hit harder. "Lila does not just work in social work," he said. "She designed the intervention model this state now uses as a foundation." The room changed, not all at once. First in the silence, then in the faces. He went on. "Several years ago, my nephew was in serious trouble, angry, skipping school. One bad step away from getting pulled into a system that would have finished the job the streets had already started. Lila met him here. In this building, she worked with him for months, not with speeches, not with miracles, with patience, structure, time. She got him to believe he still had a future." My mother covered her mouth. My father said nothing. "From what she built here," Senator Cole continued, "the program expanded, county by county, then statewide. My office now publicly supports it because it works." He glanced around the community center, at the folding chairs and borrowed flowers my father had dismissed, like they proved something shameful. "This place," he said, "is where she first did what a lot of powerful people talk about, and very few ever manage to do. She made a child believe his life was not over." That was the moment Ryan's face emptied out. The smugness went first. Then the certainty. Senator Cole offered me his arm. Let them watch now. I took Senator Cole's arm, and together, we turned toward the aisle my father had refused to walk. The room had changed so completely, it almost felt like a second ceremony had started inside the first one. Guests who had spent the last half hour politely pretending not to notice my humiliation were no longer pretending anything. I heard whispers move through the chairs in quick little bursts. "That's Senator Cole. He came for her. Did he say she built the program?" A few phones lifted. Not enough to feel ugly. Just enough to tell me the story in the room no longer belonged to my family. When we passed the front row, I looked at my father once. Not long, not dramatically, just long enough to see that the shame had found its way back home. He could not even hold my eyes. That helped more than I expected. At the altar, Michael's face steadied me the way it always had. He did not look surprised by my worth, only relieved that other people had finally been forced to see it. That mattered. There is a special kind of comfort in being loved by someone who never needed proof you were already enough. The ceremony began again, and this time, the room listened differently. What had looked small to my family now looked meaningful. The folding chairs were still folding chairs. The flowers were still simple. The old hardwood floor still creaked when people shifted their weight. But the place had changed because its meaning had changed. This was not the cheap venue my father had sneered at. This was where my real life had started. By the time Michael and I kissed, the air in the room had gone from strained to reverent. Afterward, at the reception tables, guests came to me in 2s and 3s. Not to gossip, to ask quietly what kind of work I did, how long I had been doing it, whether the kids still came through this center, and for the first time that day, My family was the one sitting in silence while the rest of the room recalculated them. Then, during the reception, Senator Cole rose with his glass and said he wanted to tell everyone exactly what I had done. Senator Cole did not give a long speech. He did not need one. He stood with his glass in one hand and looked around the room the way people do when they mean every word enough to keep it simple. Lila did not choose the path that photographs well, he said. She chose the path that changes lives.
The room went quiet again, but this time it was not the silence of embarrassment. It was the silence of people realizing they had been standing too close to something important to see it clearly.
He spoke plainly. No grand language, just facts heavy enough to settle where they landed. The intervention model I had built, he said, had helped keep hundreds of young people from falling back into the same cycle that had nearly taken his nephew. Programs shaped from that work were now active in communities across the state. And the reason they held together was not luck. It was consistency, structure. The unglamorous work of showing up long after applause would have died. That was the part that cut deepest. Not that I knew someone powerful, not that I had become impressive by my family's standards, but that while they were waiting for me to fail and come home humbled, I had been helping other families keep their children from disappearing into outcomes no apology could fix. My father rose halfway from his chair. Lila, maybe we should talk somewhere private. For the first time in my life, he did not control where the truth happened. Ryan stared down at his plate as if it might offer him a version of the evening he could still survive. My mother stepped closer to me when no one was looking directly at us and said, very quietly, I thought you'd get tired eventually. I thought you'd come back. I looked at her, and because there was nothing left to prove, I did not answer with anger. I let the truth stay exactly where it was. After Senator Cole sat down, my father looked at me with a face I had never seen on him before. How long? He asked, his voice nearly breaking. Have we not known our own daughter? Later, when the room had softened and people were busy with cake, photos, and their own conversations again, my family finally found me without an audience between us. My father spoke first. He looked older than he had that morning. I'm sorry, he said. It was not enough, and he knew it before I answered. This isn't about what you said today. I told him, today was just the first time you said it where other people could hear it. That landed. He looked down. Ryan folded his arms, then let them drop again like even he could feel how useless that posture was now. For years, I said, you treated me like I was something the family had to explain away. Like I was the daughter who chose wrong. Like I was the embarrassing version of this family. Ryan gave a tired nod. I thought I was doing better than you, he said. So I thought that meant I got to judge you. It was ugly, but it was honest. My mother's eyes filled before she spoke. I kept quiet because fighting with your father never changed anything. I told myself staying out of it was the same as not hurting you. She shook her head. It wasn't. No, it wasn't. For the first time, nobody defended themselves. Nobody polished it. Nobody called cruelty concern. That was the real consequence. My father was no longer the man in the room who got to define what counted as a good life. Ryan was no longer the child who had turned out right. And my mother had to stand inside the truth that silence had been a side all along. I'm not cutting you off, I said. But we are not going back to what we were. My father swallowed hard. Then tell me what to do. I looked at him and said, start by listening when I'm not on a stage. After the last guest left, the community center grew quiet in the honest way places do after a real day. No music, no whispers, just the soft scrape of chairs being folded, the rustle of tablecloths, and Michael carrying half-empty flower vases toward the side counter. I gathered the place cards from the reception table one by one. My wedding had begun with my father calling this room embarrassing. Now, standing in the same room with my shoes in my hand and my hair half fallen from its pins, I could see it more clearly than ever. This place had never been small. It only looked small to people who did not understand what had happened inside it. It was where I learned how to stay when someone else was ready to give up. Where I first watched a scared kid choose tomorrow instead of another bad night. Where the best part of my life had started long before anyone important arrived to name it out loud. My family asked if we could have dinner the following week. I said yes, but not quickly, and not to make them feel better. I said yes, because the door was open now on different terms. They would meet me as I was, not as the daughter they kept trying to edit into something easier to display. Michael came back to my side and touched the small of my back. How do you feel? I looked around the room one last time. Being respected feels good, I said. But it would have meant more if it hadn't taken someone powerful walking in to make it happen. That was the part I kept with me. A person's worth should not need a witness with status before other people decide to see it. And as always, this story is a work of fiction created by Revenge Pulse for storytelling purposes. If this hit you somewhere real, stay with us for the next story. That day, I did not get my family back the way it was. I got back the right to be seen clearly.